So one thing I'm gonna walk you through is how to play a YouTube video inside a project, because I have heard that a few of you are planning to play some videos in your final projects. And YouTube videos are a little bit of a different beast, because if you just get the shared YouTube video URL, it's actually a URL to the video, to the YouTube page that contains that video. And so we want to display just the video. In order to do that, we're going to use something called CocoaPods. And CocoaPods are a way of extending Xcode and Swift. And there are literally hundreds, if not thousands, of CocoaPods out there that you can bring into your project and utilize. So I'm going to try to install CocoaPods, explain a little bit of a problem that I had installing, and then walk you through this project. We'll actually create this. And so what this project does, of course, there's a little video here, and we can play.
In December 2019, China notified the World Health Organization.
And you get controls at the bottom automatically. I'm just going to stop. And then I've created some buttons here to jump to other videos.
Prior to March 2020, there's a good chance you didn't know what an N95 mask was, or at least
COVID-19 is the short name for the disease known.
So you can see they all play pretty quickly. They're streaming off the YouTube site. I added some more buttons here for future editions. Right now, those don't do anything. There's no code behind these. But I was just kind of thinking, maybe for a project in a classroom where you wanted to show a bunch of videos, you could design this to show as many videos as you want, I suppose. These could be scrolling stack views. So the way this is designed, and I'll walk you through the design, is I have a view, and then I have a stack view that encompasses all of everything else. And it's a vertical stack view that has a label, and then a label down here at the bottom, and then a horizontal stack view in between those. And that horizontal stack view contains two vertical stack views, and each one of those stack views contains 4 buttons. And then we can do some nice things as far as spacing with those stack views and have it look really nice. So that's one thing we're going to create today. Let's go into Canvas, because there's a file I need you to download. Actually, it's a folder. So if you'll go to Canvas, there's a folder in the modules of week 13 that is called iOS week 6. It's a zip file. Just download that and unzip it. It's got some code in it we're just going to use, so we don't have to type in the code, but I'll walk you through the code. And then those RTF files that I used there are there, and then the links to the different videos. Let me jump into, actually I'm gonna talk about extensions first, because there's a video out there on extensions. It's a real valuable thing to see. So let's go to Xcode, and I'm just gonna create a new project. So there's a little bit of a theme here of extensibility, because that's what CocoaPods does, but extensions allow you to extend existing classes. So I'm gonna create a new project. And I'm just going to call it extensions demo. And we'll go into main storyboard, bring up the library, and I'm going to take a text field. And a button. And then let's also add in a text view. In the text view, so we're going to delete the text that's there. For our text field, so I'm going to do all uppercase so it stands out when we work with this. So I'm going to have the text say South Mountain. And the text for my button is going to be reverse text. I think there might now be a function in the latest version of Swift that will reverse text as part of the string. That used not to be the case. And I'm not sure that it's there. I just seem to recall seeing it somewhere. But we're going to write a little extension to the string function or string class that will allow us to reverse the text of that string. So that's going to be our interface. If you want, you can take your text views and make it kind of stand out a little bit. I'm going to change the background color just slightly. Make a little cyan. All right, so that's my interface. I'm going to add my assistant editor and set that to the view controller. And we'll get ourselves some space here. So we're going to create an outlet for our text field. So we're going to control drag over here. And it's going to call it txt phrase. And let's do the same thing for our text view. And I'll call this TV message. And then we're going to add a button, or add an action to our button. So I'm going to control drag down here. I'm going to call it reverse button. Make this a UI button. So I want to just basically create a method that will reverse text of a string and be able to refer to that from the string class. So we're going to create an extension. Now that extension has to come below the ending of our class. It has to come outside of a class. The way we create an extension is simply the word extension. And then, oops, that should be an S. The class that I want to extend, and that's going to be our string class. And then I can add functions or methods that will work with strings. So we're going to create a little function here, and I'm going to call it reverse me. I'm not going to pass anything because we're going to be able to reference the string itself that we're going to do the dot notation on, but it is going to return a string. And I'm going to create a new string variable. And then I'm going to create a loop. I'll use my char as a variable. And I'm going to loop through all the characters of self. Self will be the string that comes before our dot notation. New string then is going to equal, I'm going to take the string of my char, which is an individual character, and we're going to concatenate that to the existing value of new string. And let's do this. Let's say var new string equals quote quote. So it knows it's a string and currently is nothing. It's just a null value. So it says we're missing return. That's our next step outside of the loop. We're going to say return new string. Pause here and make sure there's no errors that come up, but that looks good. So now in our button function, let's do a variable called old string, and it's going to equal txt phrase dot text and oops, we probably should unwrap that. I guess we just haven't used the variable at this point. Then let's do another variable. Var reversed equals, I'm going to take old string I'm going to start to type a method with the capital R. You'll notice we now get a reverse me method in our help, I call IntelliSense. So I'm going to choose reverse me. And then we will take our TV display dot text equals and we'll do a little concatenation. I will do a little interpolation here. Old string reversed is reversed.
TV message.
Yeah, I also have TV rather than TVs. Sorry, I was doing a similar thing earlier, and I had TV display rather than TV message. Okay. Versus now, so we can probably make these let because we're not changing them, just to get rid of those warnings. All right, no warnings, no errors. Let's test this in the simulator. So if I say reverse text, we get South Mountain reversed is Niet Not Mom Hus, or however you would pronounce that. So our extension worked. Now the cool thing is we could actually use this in other projects, just copy and paste it in. Or we could create a whole class of just extensions and make that available in a project, or add that file in, and we can reference all those things. Questions on extensions?
When do you know when you need an extension? Is it just when you're trying to do something that you can't find something for in Xcode?
So yes and no. If it's something you think you're going to use over and over again, I tend to do extensions for things that I think should be there. There should be methods attached to that class that would allow me to make this easier. I'll give you an example, and I think there's a video, I know I have a video out there on extensions. When you go to create a new color, the UI color class makes you use red, green, blue values and alpha values. But when you're working with a client, they're usually going to give you a hexadecimal value. And so I created an extension for UI color that allows me to create a new color using the hex value. And all that does, and I think I show the code in that video, is I take the hex value and break it down into the RGB decimal equivalents, actually they'd be floating equivalents. And then I simply use the UI color, new color method or initializer and pass it those RGB, but what the method does, it allows me to just specify the hex. So that's something that I think should be part of the UI class, and it's something I probably would use over and over again. I don't know that I would use the reverse me that much, but in the past I've had string functions for doing things I might do in other languages, like in C#. There's a really nice index of and substring that I'm used to using the way C# does it. And it will only work in situations where your string in Swift is basically one character by itself. There's no meme characters where we have maybe an accent with a vowel. So it's just straight character text. So the count would always be the number of characters. That's the situation I'm normally in. And the way that Swift does substrings, I find really, really clunky. And so I would probably tend to use my extension for that. We could have done the exact same thing here by writing a function, or I could have just simply written the code here in my button. Either way would work. So there's 3 different ways that we can make that happen. It's just kind of cool to be able to create an extension to a class and then make that available to other projects.
So then you keep a copy of your extensions in a document, similar like how you keep your titles?
Yes. Yes, in fact, I want to be in my navigator. So let's see if I can add a file here. So here I have a Swift file, it's my last name.swift. And here's the extension to get a color, RGBA samples from a color. But here's also the init that I was talking about in creating a color. And notice this is inside my extension for UI color. So you can have multiple functions. In this case, I have an init. And preceded with the word convenience, it's just another type of commit out there that I think it's kind of interesting. They have these convenience inits. Well, if it's convenient, why didn't you just build it into the class in the first place? So, so I'm taking a hex string, and then I am finding the hex values. Each of those are going to be 2 characters. And then I simply convert them to a 16, or take them from base 16 into a decimal value. And then because the RGB is not expecting an integer, they're expecting a floating value between 0 and 255. I simply divide those by 255.0. So now we have this here. Let's come back to our project. I'm going to go back to the view controller. And I might have this out in Canvas somewhere. If you want to play with this, let me just check. Well, let's do this. I'm going to add it to where we just got those from our week 13. So I'm going to add a new value here, a new file. Okay, so you can download that file if you want and bring it into your project. I'm going to go back to Xcode. And I'm going to go back to my view controller. Okay, so I'm going to create a outlet for my view. Call it main view. I'm going to say main view dot background color equals UI color. Now I'm going to initialize it, and I'm going to choose this hex string. That's the one I added. So I'm going to do hex string. What I do is change the string, and so I'm going to put in CF7F00. And the CF7F00 is the hexadecimal value of the South Mountain orange. So we should see happen when we test our program, our whole project should become orange. And it does. So I didn't do anything other than just include those extensions, that file of extensions, as a Swift file, and then I can access all those. And I don't remember what all's in that file, but we can take a quick look here. So here's some string functions. This was back in the day before we had the ability to pad within Swift 5. This was Swift 3. I wanted ability to pad right, pad left, and then I also added one for pad center for creating columns. And
So
then here's
when you pulled that into your new Swift, your new project,
Mhm.
it pulled an actual copy of that and placed it into your file?
It did, correct.
Okay, so it's not trying to reference, so if you share that with if you share this file with somebody, it's not like that's going to be missing.
It'll be there, correct. Yeah, it actually gets compiled into the project. So here's the index of, basically following what we would normally do, say in a C# language, and then substring, and I have two different versions of substring. So this brings up a good point as far as object-oriented programming, and that is overloading. So I have a function of substring that has two parameters, a start integer and a length integer, and then another one that only has the start. So it's going to go to the very end of that string. So I can specify I want to start with character 6 and go to the end, whereas here I might say I want to start with character 6 and go just 3 characters. So that's why you see two that are named the same. Other questions? Just so you can see this work, let's do one more. Let's do the pad right. So I'm just going to go back to the view controller again. We'll try that pad right. So I'm going to take the old string and let's do a pad right. Notice it's coming up in the IntelliSense, and it's only because it's in my hustedde.swift file. So I'm going to just double click on it. That way I get the parameters expecting. So I'm looking for a character and a width, or a char. So the character I'm going to use is just simply a space. Actually, so we can really see this, let's do a period. And then my width, we have South Mountain, that is I think 14 characters. Let's make the width maybe 20. Okay, I'm going to run that, reverse. And so now South Mountain and the periods, there are 20 characters there, and those extra characters are all periods. So you guys are welcome to take that file, add to it, make it your own, whatever. Since they've changed the way they do some string stuff in Swift 5, I have not tested the index of or the substrings. I'm not sure if those still work. I don't want to take the time to do that here, but I will check those out, make sure they're still working.
If you just jumped into this video, you can see all the videos from the iOS app development cohort playlist by clicking on the image in the lower right. And if you'd like to be alerted to future videos that I create, you can click my picture up in the top right and subscribe to the channel.